page, I'm in 757.
Well, I appreciate our invitation out here today, and so I do feel equally as honored as if I lived in the 1800s and got to come out here. Now, with that said, Page family lived in Rosewell for about 100 years, a little bit more.
Correct.
And then, how did it fall out of the family's hands?
It was sold out of the Page family in 1838. Governor John C. Page, who is the last of the Page family to own Rosewell, when he became governor of Virginia, he moved to the capital, which was in Richmond. He moved there in 1802, served his time as governor, but after he finished his time as governor, the family never really moved back to Rosewell. They stayed in Richmond. And when he died in 1808, although the family's ancestral home was here, widow Page, Margaret Page, and the children never returned to Gloucester County. They stayed in Richmond. So after Governor Page dies in 1808, Rosewell becomes abandoned. No one lives in Rosewell. Now the enslaved community is here, and the house is being taken care of by various caretakers, overseers, but no family lives in Rosewell. And in 1838, when Thomas Booth buys it, and it leaves the Page family, he does move in, but Thomas Page, who was an astute businessman, he proceeds to get his money's worth out of this mansion. Now, he buys Rosewell in 1838 for $12,000. And in 1838 dollars, that's a lot of money. But then he removes everything of value. The floors, each floor in the 3 stories was marble tiled. He removes all the marble tiling, sells it off. The walls were paneled from top to bottom with imported black walnut paneling. Removes it, sells it off. The roof was a flat lead roof. He takes all of the lead off, sells off that material. He dismantles the 2 cupolas, sells off that material. He removes all of the marble from the 17 marble mantelpieces, sells it off, and by the time he finishes selling everything of value, he has earned $35,000.
That's a heck of a return.
That's a heck of a return. 10 years later, he sells the house to his cousin, Mr. Catlett, for $22,000. But see, keep in mind that the house that Mr. Catlett buys for $22,000 is not the house that Mr. Booth bought for $12,000. So he actually earns about $45,000 from this house and kept it moving.
So, how many years did this house stay occupied before it was finally abandoned for good?
The house stayed occupied up until 1916.
And that was the year of the fire?
That was the year of the fire.
Now, do you have any idea what caused the fire?
No one really knows.
I did read that there was a gentleman that observed the clouds of smoke from across the river and was quoted as saying, "Let it burn."
Absolutely.
And is that from the dark history of the Man Page era, or the history of, slavery, and I guess a lot of upset within, history itself?
You are absolutely correct. Rosewell has a glorious past, but also a dark past. And you will find that these plantation houses throughout the South that have a history of slavery also has a history of oppression and injustice. And the descendants of those families that were enslaved here at Rosewell, many of their descendants still live in Gloucester County and were observers when the house burned. And so they had no love lost to see this symbol for them of oppression and injustice burned to the ground. No one really knows what started that fire. There's some credible speculation that maybe the fire started in a second place, or a second floor or third floor fireplace. nobody really knows. The house never had electricity. And so it was lit by gas lights and candle lights, and the fireplaces also provided warmth and light. Another story says that although the house never had electricity, when it was constructed in the 18th century, it had an exterior kitchen, which is typical for all 18th century construction. The main house and the kitchen were separate. But there was a kitchen that was finally built inside, late 19th century. One story considers that perhaps grease that had accumulated for years and years and years finally spontaneously combusted, and that is what may have started the fire. But the story that people really kind of like to embrace, and it lends a lot of credence to the ghost stories, because Roswell is said to be one of the most haunted places in Virginia. In the 18th century, rather, there was a kitchen fire in the Roswell kitchen. There was
The indoor kitchen?
The outdoor
Oh,
kitchen.
the outdoor kitchen?
The dependency building. And 11 slaves perished in that fire. There was only one door to that kitchen. And when the fire broke out, something jammed that door shut, and those slaves were not able to escape from that kitchen. And there are some that believe that the spirit of those 11 slaves that perished invaded that kitchen that was built inside of the house finally in the 19th century, set that kitchen on fire, and destroyed the house in the same manner that their lives and their final resting place, that kitchen, was destroyed.
It's an interesting fact.
Who knows?
Now, even though it was rejoiced in its period when it burnt down by neighbors and people that lived in the community, now it's very important that we salvage what remains of Roswell. And the reason behind that is just because of its dark history and its positive history, where, where do you see Roswell going in the future?
Well, Roswell is an amazing place because it is authentic history. What's remaining of Roswell, the walls of Roswell, still hold so many keys to a life once lived. And it's very difficult to get people excited about history, because history has never been something that we've looked at from a view of what we can learn to make it relevant for our lives today. History has always been a collection of dates and events that really hold no relevance for the life that we live today until you look at it through different eyes.
Until you can actually see it firsthand.
You look at it through the eyes of what history truly does teach us, either what to do or what not to do. For example, we speculate that well over 2.5 million bricks were used in the construction of Roswell, and most of those bricks were placed there by slaves. Think about the pyramids in Egypt. Think about the Great Wall of China. Those things are still there, and I'm convinced that if that fire hadn't occurred, Roswell would still be standing pretty strong and sturdy. What does Roswell, the pyramids, and the Great Wall of China have in common? These are all structures that were built by slaves. And so it is a testimony to the craftsmanship, the excellence, and the way that these enslaved, who are considered to be dumb and stupid people, it's a testimony to the fact that the enslaved may have been empty-handed, but they certainly were not empty-headed.
It's definitely a great point, and they are the main people that built America as we see it today. Some of the main people that built our colonial America.
Roswell has a very, very deep 19th century history. It was here during the Civil War. And, it doesn't matter whether you wore a blue uniform or a gray uniform. Every drop of blood that was spilled in what has been called America's bloodiest war, every drop was the same color. And if we don't learn how to resolve our differences in a different and better way, we are doomed to repeat that same history. And the Civil War destroyed generations of people. Those are the kinds of things that Roswell can help us learn. How not to repeat the mistakes of the past, or how to build on the gloriousness of our past to make our future even more glorious.
Definitely. Now, if you're a local, or if you're not a local, you're just visiting Virginia from somewhere else, you are free to come out to the Rosewell Foundation in the ruins April through November.
Absolutely.
And when you guys are here, can they set up a tour with yourself or one of your staff members?
Most of our tours are self-guided. You can come out here and kind of wander around what we have, but they can certainly set up a personal guided tour because we see things differently when we look at them through the eyes of others. And a personal tour will help you see those things. You know, people come out here, maybe all they'll see are ruins. But when you look at it through the eyes of others, and they point out the fact that those walls can talk because the blood, sweat, and tears of the enslaved that built it speak through those walls.
Definitely. As Dr. Brown has said, you can set up a tour, or you can do a self-guided tour. However, it's very important to keep history alive here in Virginia. Come out and marvel at this beautiful structure that has been preserved by these people over so many years and that is so rich in history from Virginia. I appreciate your time, Dr. Brown. Thank you so much. And we're going to be heading out to Scoot's Barbecue. I heard you just briefly have a little bit of future or past with Scoots.
I absolutely love Scoot. Our major fundraising event has been our annual barbecue and wine tasting, and guess who provides the barbecue?
Scoot.
Scoot's Barbecue.
All right, so you guys can feel free to visit rosewell.org and see all the events that are happening at Rosewell, see the schedule, find out how to contact Dr. Brown and her staff to get any questions answered that you have about Rosewell. Come on out to the foundation. Donate. I know that you guys are trying to get a 3 million by what's the campaign?
3 million by 300.
3 million
the
by
300th
300.
anniversary of Roswell's construction, which will be 2026.
2026. We need to raise $3 million for the Rosewell Foundation, and we need your help to do that. Come out, see this beautiful structure, and honor Virginia history. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you.
We jump in 757, bound to make it roll.